we'll be doing the Easter eggs and predictions for Season 7, Episode 4, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We were spoiled and not caught up. So the episode's title called Out of the Past, which was uh, a movie from in 1947, and which was most likely inspiration for this episode. And right off the bat, we have Coulson narrating in his head, and he comes across this newspaper, one of the articles was talking about Duke Ellington performing at the first integrated casino hotel, and what I can find out is that it's most likely talking about Moulin Rouge, which opened in May 24th, 1955, which this episode took place in July 22nd. So that time frame would make sense. That's where he's performed, and the only other reference there I see was they talked about Eisenhower, uh, Dwight Eisenhower, who was the 34th president and was at that time. So yeah, but the whole episode was actually about Daniel Sousa, and I could be wrong, but I believe this is the first time I've actually seen it, because in the history books, they gave the Sousa a middle name, which was Jordan. I just saw that, but then when you see the actual, if you actually read it, the page of history or whatever, you do see name drops of Peggy Carter, Jarvis, and whatnot. But then you have these flashbacks that Coulson was remembering of Sousa in a sense, but it was of scenes from season 1 episodes, a couple of different random episodes, I believe. But yeah, the scenes that you see there were from season 1 of Agent Carter. So yeah, and we actually see the Wall of Valor, which was in season 1, episode 12, the very first time. We actually got an idea of what the Wall of Valor was, which is all the fallen agents, and that's the whole idea of this episode, which was Daniel Sousa is going to be the very first fallen agent of Shield. But on the Wall of Valor, surprisingly, there are Easter eggs and references or Easter eggs to different people. I can't pronounce the last names, so I'm not going to try to butcher it. But some of them were Corey Deist. I don't know if that's right, but he was a key costumer. Then you had Sonia Streech, and she's a production staff. I don't know if there was any other Easter eggs or references on the Wall of Valor, but I'm assuming there would be. I just could not get any good clear images of the Wall of Valor. So yeah, and then Daniel Sousa mentions the Wicked Witch of the East, which Coulson actually corrects him by saying Wicked Witch of the West, which is all about Wizard of Oz and whatnot. So yeah, but then you get you actually hear his name a couple times, Tony Stark or Howard Stark, because apparently Sousa was supposed to deliver an item, which I still don't understand what it is, because they don't really talk about it that much. So, but it's really not that important as far as I can tell. Maybe it will be important later on in the season, but we don't know. But we catch up with Enoch in this episode, kind of, where he's basically the phone operator for Shield to get in contact with one another. But you have Enoch listening to this guy talk about how bad his SO is, and which is a supervising officer, which we learned about that in season 1. But we don't know who his supervising officer is, if it's even important, but it was just a running joke that he had to listen to this guy complain about it the whole entire episode. And I really thought this was kind of weird and shows kind of a progression to his character, because Enoch always explained or said the year that we were in as 1901, or what, just say that's the number. But he actually says 1955 is for the first time in this episode. I don't think he's ever said that before. So yeah, and you have back with Coulson and Sousa, and they're talking about their loved ones and whatnot. Sousa was talking about Peggy, but Coulson says he couldn't stick around long enough to make it work or last, and it's most likely talking about May because that's what was dealing with the last was called in season 5, where he had to die and whatnot. But it could be also talking about Audrey Nathan because he also died and couldn't stay around long enough to make that work because he had to die. He died and had to hide his uh, resurrection from her. So yeah, and I don't know if this is actually an actual Easter egg or references, but or it could be like a stretch. But Sousa says this song and dance is what this whole song and dance is for. Which song and dance is actually one of the titles of Agent Carter season 2 episode 9, and it actually surprisingly had a flashback or black and white sequence, which was a musical number. So it's possible that since this is a black and white episode, they were referencing that episode with that little sneaky thing. But you have Sousa like talking to the Shield team, and he actually supposedly dropping a truth bomb or like a shocking moment for the Shield team, but it turned out it wasn't because Sousa says that Hydra's been inside Shield, and all of our agents said basically, yeah, we know, stuff like that, because we've been dealing with Hydra since season 1, so it's not a big deal to them. So yeah, and you have Coulson say that the kid we left in 1931 has came back to haunt us in 1955, which they're referring to Freddie Malik, that was the Hydra agent and all that kind of stuff, because it seems like he's going to be a bigger deal than originally thought. But yes, because Deke has now been kidnapped by him because it was a missed identity like person. So because he was in the wrong, Deke was in the wrong place at the wrong time, so he was kidnapped and mistaken for a different person. So yeah, but you have the team trying to decide whether or not that they should how they should deal with Sousa's death and whatnot. What's called Max says it's much harder much easier to let a bad guy die than a good guy die, and something along those lines. And Coulson says he was his death was a motivation for a lot of the Shield agents in a lot of Shield agents in Shield. But then Max is like, yours was for the Avengers, which happened before this whole entire series actually started. So since it's wrapping up this season, so it's nice that they had a little callback to where it all began for the show. So yeah, and uh, and talking about Shield or Freddie Malik and Hydra coming back, Coulson says the past is never dead. It's not even past, which is talking about Faulkner's Requiem for a Nun, which I'm not sure what that movie is about or that book is about. So yeah, he just mentions that it's an author, so I had to look that up and whatnot. But I didn't really look. I didn't deep dive into what it's about. So yeah, we finally get an answer of what's going on with May. She was very cold when we first met her in this season. But then she started having a bit of like a panic attack last episode, which Yo-Yo actually mentions to Simmons. But we find out that she actually she's an empath now, which is kind of convenient because her story, like since it's like I said, it's going all like full circle in mentioning stuff that happened in the past, which was since May's storyline has been so tied to this one incident back in Bahrain, it's kind of convenient or kind of cool that her powers now kind of are the same as what happened to her in Bahrain, where she was terrified of Katya. So yeah, it's kind of interesting that they did that for the final season for May, where it's now she's on the other side of what happened with at that instant, like defining moment for her. So yeah, and you finally have Enoch again, and he's finally had enough with the phone tag, I guess, or operator system. But he says, I'm alone as I always have been, and which like I said in a previous video, which is as I have always been, has been, is going to be an episode title in an upcoming episode. I don't know exactly which one it is, but it's a most likely it's still going to be about the Chromicons in some sort of way. So, and I'm just stretching here or whatever, but I would kind of find it funny if, or kind of, it would be kind of cool if this is what they were trying to symbolize or whatever. But when Coulson's system was started to reboot again and started seeing color, the very first thing he saw was May in color, and there was an episode called a Light in the Darkness, which was in episode or season 1 episode 19, I believe it was, and that was dealing with Audrey and all that kind of stuff. So having May go into color and focus for Coulson, it would be kind of cool if that's a callback to that episode, a Light in the Darkness. So yeah, but you have what's called things again, name drops like the icer that Coulson used to knock out Sousa, and he mentions that there's body snatching aliens coming from the future and trying to take down Shield basically to Sousa, and I'm assuming that was a reference to the body snatch invasion of this body snatcher movie and book. I believe it's a book. I don't know, but I know it's a movie. So yeah, and I believe it came out in 1956, so just a year after this episode took place. So yeah, and he mentions to Sousa saying, "Welcome to life after death," which is basically commenting on how he's died a couple times and has come back to life again a couple times. So I want to see where Sousa and Coulson's dynamic is going to go now that they can kind of relate to each other. So yeah, and we finally we go to a new time zone, and it's in 1933, or at least that song is from 1933, which was "No More Mr. Nice Guy." And by the look of the trailer, it doesn't look like that 1973, but I'm not going to spoil exactly anything other than that. And it looks like we're going to have a Chromicon and Hydra team up throughout the season, and that's it for Easter eggs or references. And the one thing I'm gonna say before predictions is I kind of hope that they do have some sort of comment or reference to something that like retcons or helps not make it feel like a plot hole next episode, because the the timeline we're in now, 1930s, 1970s or whatever. There's a very big issue that I seen in the trailer for the next upcoming episode, and I'm not going to say exactly what it is until the next video. So yeah, and the only prediction I actually have is that Coulson or Enoch will have to stay in the past, because they say that they have Coulson and the Chromicon. I believe they call him Luke in on like the IMDb. Has a conversation earlier on in the episode saying that if the Chromicons escalate, our Shield team will have to escalate, and we find that at the end of the episode, the Chromicon Luke has stayed back in 1950s to like help Hydra infiltrate Shield and all that kind of stuff. So that seems like an escalation to me. So I wonder. I'm assuming at some point, once Coulson and Enoch find out that the bad Chromicons are staying back in time, that Coulson or Enoch will have to stay back in time to stop the Chromicons from doing whatever they're going to be doing, because our Shield team is going forward in time and they can't stay there in a certain time or a certain time too long, because they would grow old, whereas the Coulson and Enoch don't age, so it's a lot easier for them to just stay in there and help fight against the Chromicons, while our Shield team ends up wherever they end up in the future. So yeah, so that's the only Easter eggs and references and predictions for the upcoming episodes. See ya.